So Annika, you and I are sitting in the middle of the Great Hall, which is one of the great 13th century aisled halls in this country, and you were invited to respond to this context as part of a project called artSOUTH Collaborations.
I was very impressed, of course, of the space because it's so massive and it has such history. I feel that I don't know enough, and it makes me quite scared. And that was initially the text, something about being scared or like being impressed about something and you can't relate to it. I wanted for the first time trying to make something with a sculptural text work. So that was the idea first.
So in fact, you have worked with text a lot in the past, and the text is the catalyst for other things to happen. You've come up with a work entitled Look the Other Way.
Yeah, if you go into the hall, you see there is certain choreography, or the physical movements of the audience who's coming in here. And of course, obviously, the first thing they do is to look up. So I wanted to do something about that. I was trying to make maybe a performance piece to that. Actually, you are looking at my text work, which is a sculpture, but it is asking you to actually look somewhere else. So that is bringing back what I often have made in many of my text works. I wanted to make sense of the work. How can I do the contrast to make it into, from this medieval fantastic hall into something contemporary and youth?
Out of that began a conversation with Amanda Smallbone from the Department of Performing Arts at the University of Winchester. We had an initial meeting in the hall here with Annika a few months ago, and the idea was that we would just meet and have a discussion of ideas, and we had a few key themes that began to emerge. So the different genres of vocal genres. So that was one key thing that I took away from that conversation, and also that Annika was very keen that it was mostly sung. Because we had a discussion of maybe using spoken text. And that was kind of a broad brief, really.
Having got the brief, I think you've got the idea, okay, so this is the brief, we need to follow the brief, and then it's like, I can think of, what can come out of that? Instead of following the brief, you can develop the brief, possibly more. And I think as other performing artists, we can add extra things in about a performance side of it, as opposed to what might be intended from the artist's perspective.
The score materialises out of what we call a collaborative process. I've really only gleaned from the brief what you might call materials. There are certain materials that are rather quite overt. The fact that the sculpture itself is made out of what seems to be concrete, that they are, in a way, an art that should be in public spaces. They have a reference to what called street culture, but within the context of a site-responsive binary. So the heritage of this building, for instance, gives you a sense that there is a binary here. There is a street culture that we can utilise as part of the material, but there's also the idea of a high art or signifiers of a high art sort of culture that sort of create a problematic. And it's solving that problematic that became the sort of collaborative discussions in this new group.
I wanted to record something from this choir, and that as if it was a DJ playing different kind of songs, and make the choir into that record.
Yes.
But as a live performance.
Yeah. It did bring to mind a real aesthetic for us, an aesthetic sound of this kind of quite disjointed, quite gritty sound. So we did use that as a real influence when we started working. So one of the really interesting things for me about this whole project and about the piece is that it will evolve over the 3 months that it is in situ. And the idea that we have different audiences coming through, it's evolving all the time. So I think that's quite fascinating. So we will have performances at different times of the day. The light will change with the time, and that will change the way that the piece is received, I think.